song like that because my message today is entitled, I'm Tired of Church. I really am. It's going to be a short sermon, but this whole idea of Jesus Christ saying to his disciples, in the midst of the world in which he came, he says, there are two things that I want you all to be. And he said, I want you to be light in the world. And he also said, I want you to be salt. Oh, Dr. Cora Green is here. Where's your husband? Huh? He'll be here? He wants to make sure you came here. He's good. Oh, you finished yours. Okay. Good to see you. Cora is going to be preaching on the 8th. Is it? Whatever that Sunday is, of November. Okay? So, ladies, make sure you invite a whole bunch of folk. Come on out and support. And men, too. Amen. Come on out and be here for Dr. Green when she's going to be preaching. I think it's the 8th or something. Second Sunday in November. But Jesus said something to his apostles. He says, there are two things that I want you to be. I want you to be light in the world, and I want you to be salt. Everybody sees light. And there is a sense in which most people in church rarely want to be light. They want to be seen. But is that salt? Nobody wants to be salt. And Jesus says, I want you to be light in the world so that everybody can see you, and more importantly, so that you could be the agent that dispels darkness in our world. So he says, I want you to be light. I want you to go out there, and I want you to remove darkness wherever darkness is. But he also says, I want you to be like salt in the earth. Nobody sees salt. You can feel it. You know when it's there. Salt, and I'm going to talk about that later. But salt is that ingredient. It makes the food taste good, but you don't see it. You just feel it. And most of us, when it ain't there, we know it ain't there. Because we kind of, excuse me, we kind of reach over there. It ain't good for us. God knows it ain't good for us. But when it's not there, salt has a way of getting to you. It's working. It's working. And it is this that I want to talk about, at what Christians need to be. Christians need to influence. Not necessarily to be seen, but to be an influence to affect our world. So I'm just tired of church. Because nobody wants to be salt in the earth. Nobody wants to really influence our world. I'm tired of church that is just all about singing on Sundays, and we don't live that life out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm tired of church that is all about being, but not about doing anything. I'm tired of church that is all about controlling leadership. I'm tired of church that is all about who is in charge. I'm tired about church when everybody wants to keep their hands clean, but nobody wants to get dirty. I'm tired of church. I'm tired of the kind of church that just judges everybody. I'm tired of church that causes us not to want to move to the left or the right because somebody is going to judge you. I'm tired of church. I'm tired of church that is only Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock or 10:30. I'm tired of church that all it is about is that see me in church on Sunday, but you dare not say that to me on Monday or Tuesday. I'll cuss you out. I'm sorry, Debbie, that you have to come to church to hear this on the first time you're coming to church, but I'm tired of church. I'm tired of church that forgets what relationships are all about. I'm tired of church that forgets that all church is about is relationships. Building relationships. That's what it is. I'm tired of church that doesn't care how your brother or your sister thinks. I'm tired of church that all we have is a bunch of people that want to step above on each other and not to love each other. I'm tired of church. And it is a shame. I've been preaching for 53 years. And it is a shame that after 53 years of preaching that I can stand here and say, I'm tired of church. I really am. I'm tired of church because I don't think church today is about salt. It's a lot of light and no salt. I'm tired of the type of church that doesn't make a difference in where I work. I'm tired of church that is only Sunday. But it's not about Monday. It's not about Tuesday. It's not about Wednesday. I'm tired of that kind. I'm not tired of God. I'm not tired of Jesus Christ. I'm not tired of the blood of Jesus Christ. I'm not tired of that, but I'm tired of that kind of church that has become a disgrace to so many people. I'm tired of church that tells me that I've got to be like everybody else. I'm tired of church that tells me I've got to be a carbon copy of you. I'm tired of church that tells me if I want to be a part of this church, I've got to walk like you, I've got to talk this way, and I'm tired of that kind of church. I'm tired of the kind of church that doesn't allow me to be an individual. I want to be me. I want to be an individual. I'm tired of church. Church folk, but not Christians. And we are starting a series next week on discipleship. Because Jesus Christ calls us to be disciples, never called us to be Christians. Good God Almighty. Amen. Amen. Because even Jesus Christ was not a Christian. Hello, somebody. Amen. Even God is not a Christian. They were first called Christians at Antioch as a derisive term. And Jesus Christ never called anybody to be a Christian, but what Jesus Christ did, he says, come follow me and be my disciple. And so that's what's wrong. We have a lot of Christians, but we don't have disciples. That's why I'm tired of church. No disciples, but a lot of Christians, man. A lot of church folk. Let me tell you the difference. Church folks act as though they're happy. Disciples are really happy. Church folk got to put that car in another gear to act as though they're happy. You know, they put a smile on. That's church. Church folk will put a smile on and cuss you out. You call church folk and tell them that you're having problems in your marriage. And as soon as you hang up, they're going to call Sister Daphne. Daphne, have you heard? That's what church folk do. Church folk are the worst folk to tell your problems to. That's why I hate church. Church folk don't pray for you. They talk about you. That's why I'm tired of church. I'm tired of church that people don't know how to pray for each other, but they know how to talk about each other. That's church folk. Church folk are extremely critical. When you're in the midst of church folk, you better act right, because church folk will talk about you. Christians or disciples will always correct you, but they do it in love. Church folk are just critical. And church folk walk away from you, and they will never hug you. Disciples will hug you. Disciples will tell you what they don't like about you, but disciples will make sure they hug you and say, look, I love you. That's what disciples do. Disciples care whether you get your feelings hurt. Church folk don't care whether you get your feelings hurt. Church folk just say, that's who I am. Whether you like it or not, that's who I am. That's what church folk do. That's why I'm tired of church. I know y'all didn't come to hear that this morning. But take it. It's good for you. Just say, ouch. Church folks fret about what to wear to church. Come on. Church folk got to go through their wardrobe and come on, Venus. I wasn't talking about you. But church folk spend 2 hours, and I ain't talking about you either, Barbara. Church folks spend a whole lot of time. They really care about what they wear. They want to make sure they look good, make sure everything is good. Disciples don't care what they put on. They just put on. They just come to church. Because you see, church folk come to church to meet Christ. Disciples come to church with Christ. Come on. Church folk. They come here hoping that Christ is in church, and no wonder they leave church talking about, I ain't feel nothing in church. And I say, you didn't bring nothing to church? I'm talking about you, Georgina. I ain't talking about you. Leave here saying the preacher was talking about me. Church folk. That's who I'm tired of. I'm tired of church. I'm tired of church folk because church folk tell you what political party. Ooh, I didn't want to go there, Commissioner, but I just need to go there. Ooh, Lord. Church folk tell you that you can't be a Christian if you vote for Republicans or you vote for Democrat. Disciples say, it don't make a difference what party you belong to. Because God is not a Republican. Well, I'm almost sure of that. And God is not a Democrat. God is not a libertarian. He's not independent. she is not independent. I know God is a politician. That I know for sure. But I don't know what party. I don't know that God, it doesn't make a hill of beans a difference. What Christians or disciples, what disciples need to do is to get to the place where when you go to vote, you vote on issues and policy.
Amen. Yes. Amen. Amen.
Not a party,
Amen.
but policies. Make sure that as a disciple of Jesus Christ, when you find policies, and if you happen to be a Republican, if you happen to be a Democrat, whatever party you belongs to, make sure that you are willing to call out your party because of policies that seem to contradict the word of God.
Amen. Yes.
So be a Republican, be a Democrat, be an independent, but whatever you are, be policy driven. So let me talk about the kind of church I'd like to see, because you know I'm tired of church. And there are two people this past week who really were salt in the earth in America. And I want to talk about those two people. First of all, there's a young lady by the name of Malala. Somebody up there need to wake up. This is Malala. Malala is not a Christian. Malala is a Muslim. But I think God can handle it. But Malala is what I think the church needs to be about. Malala was the youngest person who ever received the Nobel Peace Prize. Malala was 17 years old in Pakistan. Malala believed that every woman should get an education. Malala believed that it is wrong and went around to all the Muslim countries and she took on the Taliban. Put a shame to all these people who call themselves Christians and all they want to do is to go to church on Sundays and sing Kumbaya. But here is, this woman is salt in the earth. Her face is twisted slightly. She received a bullet. The Taliban shot her on the left of her face, blew the left side of her face off because she refused to stay home. And she says, no, education is for everyone. And Malala went the length and the breadth of Pakistan, saying every woman has a right to go to school. That is an inalienable right. Malala gives me the kind of church that I want to belong to, even though she's a Muslim. I says, Assalamu alaikum, Malala. Because that's what church should be. That's what Jesus Christ meant when Jesus Christ said, I want you to be the salt in the earth. I want you to make a difference. Amen. Malala was on a bus one day, and the Taliban came in, and the Taliban soldiers came in with all their guns, and all these women were on their way to school. And the Taliban came on the bus, and the Taliban says, who is Malala? And all these young ladies who were on their way to school, nobody wanted to say who Malala was. And the Taliban says, I will kill all of you unless you tell me, who is Malala? Somebody finally said, "That's Malala." And the Taliban shot the left side of her face. She was airlifted to England. She spent months in the hospital. Why? Because that's what church is supposed to be about. That's what Jesus Christ meant when he says, "I want you to be the salt of," 17 years old to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And I looked at Jean and I looked at Malala last night on the global initiative. And Malala said to the countries of the world that the United Nations made a declaration some years ago that every girl child must be assured of an education through the 9th grade. Some years ago. And Malala stood up last night and Malala said, "No. Women and young girls should not be assured of an education through the 9th grade, but women and young girls should be afforded an education through college." Malala makes a difference. Malala is the salt of the earth. Malala is who tells people and is telling the world, boy, I wish we had more Christians who are willing to do this. That when we see injustice, that we are willing to say it's wrong. And Malala, an 18-year-old Muslim girl, giving her life for what she believes, giving her life to make a difference in the world, that's the kind of church I want to see. And then there is another person. Marilyn, you would love this. There's another person. I heard somebody say yesterday, it makes me want to become a Roman Catholic. The Pope put to shame this week all these loudmouth preachers who've been running out on TV with their mega churches and their mega this and their mega that. Pope Francis, a Jesuit Argentinian priest, the son of immigrants, came to this country and made John Boehner resign. Accomplish what nobody gonna accomplish. But the Pope, 78 years. I've never seen a 78-year-old guy with as much energy as the Pope has. And I said, boy, that's salt. First time ever to the United States. And to see the Pope coming here to this country, the richest country in the world, and to teach Americans what our priorities should be. It is the Pope that had to come to this country to remind us of our responsibility to put children first. It is this Pope that had to come to this country to travel on the highways and the byways and in conventions and in New York and in Philadelphia And as it's this Pope, as he traveled in that little Fiat, to remind us that children are always first. I was kind of getting scared for the Pope there. And it must have been a nightmare for security. Boy, what a nightmare that must have been. And I had a flashback to when Reagan was shot. And I thought for a moment, I said, my gosh. There was just one other time when I was really scared for security, was when Barack Obama and Michelle were walking down in the open. And I said, God, please don't let it happen. You know the story. With all these assassinations, and they always say, if you want to stop assassinations, put a black man as the vice president. Nobody will ever kill the president. But it has turned around now. We can't use that anymore. But to see the Pope come into this country to say, this is children. And I saw the Pope hugging children. I saw children with tears in their eyes, understanding, Papa, 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 this ought to be our priority, but there is something else. I saw the Pope going out of his way to touch the infirm and the weak and the sick, and to say, they come first, they are the most important people. And then to see the Pope go before Congress, a do-nothing Congress.
That's right.
And this little guy, boy, that's salt. And this is what caused Boehner to resign. He said to the Congress, the Pope, not an American, an Argentinian. This is what the Pope said to Congress. A political society endures when it seeks as a vocation to satisfy common needs by stimulating the growth of its members, especially those in situations of greater vulnerability or risk. Legislative activity, he said, is always based on the care for all people. To this, he said to the Congress, you have been invited, called, and convened to those who elected you. And the Pope says, yours is a work which makes me reflect in two ways on the figure of Moses. On the one hand, the Pope says, the patriarch and the lawgiver of the people of Israel symbolizes the need of peoples to keep alive their sense of unity by means of just and fair and equitable legislation. On the other hand, the Pope says, the figure of Moses leads us directly to God and thus to the transcendent dignity of the human being. Moses provides us, he says, with a good synthesis of your work. You are asked to protect, by means of the law, the image and the likeness fashioned by God on every human. Boy, you talk about salt. This is giving Congress sleepless nights. for an Argentinian to come to say, this is why you are elected, this is who you are. Not to bicker and to fight, but to work together for the common good of those who elected you into office. And then, boy, what a pope, Marilyn. What a papa. What a pope. What a pope. And to understand this, that some years ago when the Roman Catholic Church was ridden with scandal, and nobody tries to give the leaders and the priests a pass at it, but the Roman Catholic Church was on the verge of disintegrating. And to see this man elected to office and to bring back dignity and poise and spirituality to the Roman Catholic Church is alive. Now, I disagree with the Roman Catholics' position on women in ministry. I do vehemently disagree. I think they're wrong. I think women should be priests. And I trust that the day will come when they will come to that position where they understand that God is not a man or a woman. And the Pope finally says to Congress, there are 4 people, 4 Americans that I want to elevate. And he says, Abraham Lincoln, a great person who helped free the slaves. He says, Abraham Lincoln. And then he said, the other person that I want to elevate is Dr. Martin Luther King. But the other 2 people blew everybody's mind that nobody knew about, especially if you're not a Roman Catholic. Dorothy Day, a worker, an activist, a woman who just was jailed over and over and over again for being salt in the earth, for refusing to be silent when injustice was meted out to people. And Dorothy, he says, Dorothy Day. And then, of course, Thomas Merton, a saint, man who's introduced to America in the 20s and 30s, a type of spirituality was not that was worn on the shoulder, but the type of spirituality that's on the inside. And he says, this is salt. So maybe I will not be tired of church if church becomes salt again. Because, Gerald, what you read, what Jesus says is, if the salt has lost its saltiness, what good is it? If the salt no longer preserves, if the salt no longer influences, what good is it? What good is a child of God if you don't make a difference in the little world that you are living in? You just taking up space. I was coming to church. I went to picking up Brenda Lee this morning. And I saw this one car just pulled out and driving recklessly. And the next thing I know, I was coming down in Hiawassee, and the next thing I know, this guy, little guy, comes out of the car and he approaches another guy. He cuts the other guy off, and he comes out of the car, and I thought they were going to get in a fight. And I was driving along, and I knew I had to get to Brenda Lee for a certain time. And I said, you know what? I just can't stop. I can't keep going. What if the guy go killed? And I just had to stop. And I know I told Brenda Lee I'll be there in 10 minutes, but I just had to stop. I stopped my car, put the emergency lights on, and I got out, and I got in the middle of it, and I'm like, I could have kept going and wonder whatever happened. But I could never live with myself. I stopped. Now, I know if the fight had broken out, I will be the first to run. But I stopped, just hoping that the guy who was all irate, and because he sees me, he might think he's a policeman, he might think I'm an undercover. Just the presence, I just felt, well, he might think I'm somebody. But if the fight started, I will look for my car, and I will be in my car. But sometimes that's all we have to be as a salt. We don't necessarily have to risk our life unless you feel God is calling you to risk your life. But there are times when we have to stand up for something. Be willing to make a difference. That's why people like Nathan Chambers, Nathan, let me just tell you this, and I'll tell you this, and maybe I never told you. The reason why politicians are so crooked is because Christians decide that they don't want to have nothing to do with politics. I've said all the time, God is a politician. Amen. That's why we have a book in the Bible called Judges. They were all politicians. What do you think they were? They were politicians. God appointed them to be the political leader of the people and the religious leader. And there are not enough of us that want to be politically savvy and to know what's going on. I don't want the government to keep spending my money and I don't have anybody in there to represent me. So, God bless you, brother, because you have to make a difference. And I know in the early days when Nathan began to think. I know when he began to, because as they say with politicians, you got to get restless. And I knew when he began to get restless, things beginning when he couldn't sleep. And then well, I might as well get on in there to make a difference. That's what we have to do. We have to make a difference. So thank you. Be the salt. Be salt. Be salt. Be salt. Too many of us want to be light. We want to be seen. Be salt. Oh, let me just mention a few things about salt before I let you go. There's a few things. Salt. Salt preserves. Salt gives flavor. Wow. Salt brings healing. Many times when you're growing up and your mother want to bring that salt when you get a bruise or something, and you say, I don't think that brings healing. But there's one thing I like about salt. Salt makes people thirsty. And just maybe, if we become salt in the world, just maybe other people will become thirsty for the Christ that we know. Amen. Amen. Boy, we just be that salt in there. And people get thirsty and they want to drink of that. So you have been so positively responsive. So I can say now, I'm not tired of church anymore as long as I have you. With you, with me, help me not to be tired of church. Amen. And by the way, we made a mistake up there. It's not, teacher, you got a finger up in the air? Oh, it's not the 16th of November, 2016. It's 2015. We closed on the church on November 16 or 15. Yeah. And we have to be out by the 30th of November. Pray, pray, pray. And we're working on the new name of the church. We, who? No, this is Lake Como. We're not going to be in Lake Como. We will keep connections, but we're moving out to Lake Como. This is Lake Como. We're not going to be in Lake Como anymore. If who? No, not the lake. We move in Lake Como.